Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. And we are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question. And that is, how do I get back on my feet after encountering this miserable relationship? A relationship with someone they feel is really severe manipulator, pathological liar, malignant narcissist, psychopathic. They just don't seem to have any conscience, and it's really set her up in a whirlwind. So whether you're a male or female, or the relationship you had with this manipulative others, it doesn't matter. It can be very difficult to get your bearing and move on. Most people don't understand. And they just say, well, just shake it off. It was an affair. It wasn't right for you. It wasn't a good fit. There's 1,000,001 fish in the sea. Just move on. It's not that easy. It's very complex when you talk about really the entrancement and the entrapment as well, and the sort of coming through the delusion that is set up by these individuals. A con man, a con woman, verging on very severe, causing professional damage, financial damage, emotional damage, and, tearing apart your family, tearing apart your work, your focus. It can be very in-depth and intense when you're really trying to separate, make sense of, and move on and become productive. And feel like you have you can get back on track after you've been in a relationship with someone who is extremely manipulative, who's really, taken you to the cleaners, who's pulled the rug over your eyes, the sheep's wool, whatever it is, they deceived and betrayed. And, one of the characteristics of, people who are narcissistic as well as psychopathic, and I do kind of put the lump together because really part of the, aftermath that an individual is having to face and deal with and come to terms with, I feel is quite similar, but varies on degree. So, someone who is malignant narcissistic, who is, all about the ego, how they protect themselves as being the number one, the superior, the better than everybody. And this usually is involved with a lack of empathy, meaning they put on a show that they are in a relationship where they care, but really there's a really profound selfishness, and they're not attentive to, they don't register, they don't connect with others, they don't bond with others really like most other people do. They're in it for the short haul, they're in it for what they can gain, and then as soon as you're used up, they figure you out, they're quote unquote bored, they're disappointed, you're too predictable, all the devaluation and then discard that the narcissist, it's always, you don't meet their standards, even though you're perfectly loving, capable, you've given them more than you've given anybody, yet they're still dissatisfied, and they're moving on with several other people. They're, your chronic complainers, your chronic fault finders. And people end up getting, stuck by these individuals very hard. The arrow hurts very deep. There's a puncture to the heart, the belly, wherever it is, into your mind where it's really in depth. And then likewise with a psychopath, someone who's really, it's just so much more profound. The despair, the confusion, the manipulation, and sort of the rewiring and resetting of values that become abandoned. But either way, there seems this feeling of specialness or uniqueness by each of these individuals because of their ego. And to really get productive and move on, it's important to understand that part of, as Eckhart Tolle talks in his book, A New Earth, he really talks about the ego. And the ego is always threatened by being diminished. In other words, it wants to have that, what society calls your big I am, proof and validation. The house, the job, whatever it is, the relationship status, that is the ego. And it takes a real threat to being diminished. And so really kind of, if you look at how that applies in a relationship and trying to become, get back on your feet and feeling productive again, it's important to understand, once again, the cause has created this effect. And oftentimes when you're sort of figuring this out, there's a lot to figure out, like what happened. A lot of people need to become very introspective, meaning you really need to take a look within and, maybe get a therapist or someone to talk to who really gets this, who can be supportive. And, you really need to have some introspection and understand what just happened. Look at the track, the journey that led to all this, and then to kind of take stock. And oftentimes people need, they might need to take a real sort of respite from work. I mean, a real sort of retreat, if you will, to kind of come to terms with this. It's very difficult to, take up the work and then let go of the work. There needs to be some continuity and some consistency to really, and really when you're in a relationship, it almost forces personal growth. It forces you to become introspective and say, never again. This has really got me. And so really, one of the really important things to becoming productive, again, I feel, is the inner non-resistance to events. The inner non-resistance to these events. And Eckhart Tolle, he's written a number of books. A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose is a great resource and tool. It's kind of heavy reading, or it's kind of in-depth, very psychologically oriented, but the inner non-resistance to events is crucial, because once again, a lot of people want to resist the breakup. They want to resist, that this can be. They want to resist, meaning they want to push it away and fight for it. They feel that, their ego then has some validation. It needs to be heard. I gave you this. I gave you this. I did this for you. This sort of weighing out, this sort of trying to, come to terms and calculate what just happened, that this is so unfair. And so once again, there's this egoic reaction to people who are very ego-based. So, people then get really, a blow to this. They feel embarrassed. They feel ashamed. They feel that, they're the odd man out or the odd woman out, that they're, have this small image then of themselves. And yes, we go in depth here, so hang in there. I know it's a lot of content and very complex stuff, but I hope that this resources that we're kind of curating here does help. So it's very important, in order to move through and become productive, that you understand that you need to get back to your own physiological rhythms. Getting to sleep on time, eating good, healthy meals, not spending all sorts of time oversleeping or over-worrying, overextending yourself. Because the ego, which is trying to resist this, oftentimes will want to really puff itself up. I did this, I did that, he was this, she was that. There's this egoic connection, which, if you really look at it, that you need to come to terms with. And yes, become introspective, but take a look and really kind of take a check within yourself and see, to what degree are you having an egoic reaction. In other words, you feel this wounded ego. You feel this, perspective that you're feeling made small or diminished or less important than. Of course, this is how the manipulator is usually able to gain so much ground, because the way that they diminish and are dismissive of others, and treat them as less than, not important. The psychopath, who can hurt into just the most profound depths, just seems to be walking away, and then it's like, well, do you still want to, get together tomorrow, as if nothing happened. So there's this very difficult comprehension element as well when you're coming out of a relationship with someone who just doesn't have the emotional vocabulary and the wherewithal to really connect with others. One thing that's important to understand about a psychopath as well as a malignant narcissist is they definitely have attachment disorders. They don't attach to others, bond, connect, look for the long haul. There's this commitment-ophobia that can, plague depths and intimacy of the relationship. In other words, once it gets really genuine, or something happens, someone gets sick or they lose their job, and you find that the narcissist is like, walking away, and the psychopath, might be there to still fit your needs, but meanwhile, they're triple timing you, and you're just like, you find this out, and you become on this hunt to figure out where are you now, and you're trying to, the super sleuth comes in. In other words, your cognitive dissonance is getting the best of you, and you have to get to the bottom of it. You become like the Sherlock Holmes, and you're trying to figure out, well, where were you? What do you mean? Why didn't you do this? And then you're trying to, really get very confrontational. That's really the beginning of the end, the rock bottom. And that's actually a very good stage and healthy stage to be at, where you really are sort of belting it all out, and you're basically screaming to the universe, not just this person, but that you will not have this in your life, that this is intolerable. So you're like, these blood-curdling screams or cries, or depression can be really like your body saying no more. Like this is a sign, that you truly need to move on. This is not impassioned love. A lot of people misinterpret it. Oh, I'm in the throes of love. I'm just so passionate. I'm fighting for this relationship. No, you're still under the influence. You're still under the addiction. You're still under this sort of conglomerate of neurotransmitters and hormones that develops. I feel it's this very chronic, but very addictive state where you're basically sort of addicted to your own self-destruction, or self-abandonment, meaning you begin to become aroused, titillated by self-abandonment, which is not a healthy perspective. It is not healthy to be aroused and, seduced by someone who has done you wrong. Some people might say, oh, will the makeup this? No. That is not healthy. That is not going to get you, sanity. In fact, it's just going to be, the whole is going to become an abyss. And, if you think that you can play with the fire with this person, I would beg to differ. You don't want to tangle with these types of relationships. It's not exciting. You might think it's exciting. That is the addiction really casting its spell on you. It is not impassioned love, fighting for love when this person has betrayed you. There's obvious evidence to the contrary that they cannot love and be committed and follow through on their promises. So that's part of the addiction, is that you're not able to really get a square, sober look at the truth of the matter. This hyper arousal begins to, like a bad habit, it becomes, like a craving. And a lot of people say, oh, well, this, it makes me feel so wanted or so desired, or I so want this person, I so desire. Look at and really check yourself out. And, desiring this, craving, this is the throes of addiction. And not just, like a sex addiction. Oftentimes it's to being manipulated. And this is a very, very unhealthy state that I would encourage you to understand is only going to wear and tear on you emotionally, to the extent that it's going to leave you very alone, and also wasting a lot of time. Wasting a lot of time when you're in this, in this sort of saga and drama of a relationship. People then, a lot of the reason why they stay and they can't really feel like they're productive, because this addiction is taking away from your productivity. It is a true, truly overwhelming event. People are driven to the brink of, not recognizing their own routine because they're so overwhelmed. They're so addicted. And it's really very powerful. And, the issue is that oftentimes, I would say not, not so much the malignant narcissist. I feel that they take more of an ego stroke when you're crying for them and yada yada, and I'll go way out of my way, and I've done this for you, and I went out of my way, and I did this, and I'm showing you this. You're trying to salvage the relationship or show that you're up to par with them, or whatever game that they have caused, for you, which the narcissist is, once again, it's the ego. It is all, how they're perceiving how they appear. You can't just oftentimes, let it all hang out with these people. The ego does not allow. So you have to be very careful to get productive. Look at your own egoic reaction. Is it your ego that is wounded? Which oftentimes it is, and it's okay to admit that. In the privacy of this video, in the privacy of your thoughts, just to admit, it's not that I lost or I'm a loser. It's, it's to have gratitude that this relationship even occurred. And I know that's difficult to say, but oftentimes it's actually a very biggest wake-up call that you need to do to self-protect and preserve yourself. In that you want the real thing. You want the right thing. You want to be ready to actually be able to receive the real thing and the right person, and not somebody who, is on this illusory, setting all this drama into motion. Once again, the drama might seem extremely appealing. There's this addiction that gets set up, and oftentimes people push themselves in the relationship, doing without sleep, doing without their routine, sacrificing their work, sacrificing their family, your obligations to your health. Everything seems to be less important. They're preoccupied with this person. That is the sign of an addiction. Healthy relationships, have a little bit different foundation, I would say. There's a give and take. There's a respect. There's a listening and feeling of being heard, validated. That is a healthy relationship. And that will get you, the juice in the relationship. But it's a very scary combo. If you ask me, when people especially get then into the realm of those people who are psychopathic, who don't have a conscience, who hyper arouse people with their words. Oh, you're scrumptious. You make me hungry. All the different, things that they say that are unique, and different from your other relationships, and you felt so desirable. You have to look at your ego. And what did your ego bite on? What did you kind of register in that you have to appeal and appease and please this person? In other words, how did they get this position of power in your life? And like back in the day, question authority. I think that used to be a slogan, maybe like back in the 80s or something. You have to ask, how did this relationship that I'm addicted to, how did this become an authority over me where basically I kind of lost myself in the process? I always feel that a relationship, you should be able to know yourself, and you should be able to find yourself and enhance yourself in the relationships. In other words, it'll bring out the best of you. It is in your best interest. And it's not like someone has to really, sacrifice so much to be in the relationship. Yes, maybe if you've been in a relationship, this person gets sick and you have to take time out and assist them, or take them to doctor visits, and things like that where you have to forego. But usually, it's important to be mature enough and to still take care of yourself, even though maybe you're taking care of somebody else. So there's a maturation level. But to get productive, you have to unequivocally say, I need to go without this addiction. I need to really be rigorously honest and say, to what degree is this relationship an authority in my life? To what degree have I lost my own personal power? To what degree have I lost my clarity and my perspective? To what degree was my ego caught up in this? And then to cease the resistance. So once again, the inner non-resistance to events. In other words, stop, this egoic hanging on and resisting the fact that this relationship, not only was it not in your best interest, but it's something you might even need to recover from and heal from and do some introspective self work, and look at the cause that's created this, and when does it stem from, where does it root from, what are your lessons learned. And it's very important to do that and really come to terms out loud and write them down. What are my lessons learned? What were the red flags that I just turned, I just didn't acknowledge and validate? So to what degree now can I become humble enough to say, well, maybe I don't know it all. Maybe I was too egoically involved. Maybe there's something in me that's resisting, this awareness of what I truly need in my life. And that's okay, because what you're really looking for, you will get. You need to kind of get back, and some of my recommendations are the following. Get back into a routine. If this person is caused major doldrums, major depression, and not in the the sense of the word, I'm just talking about how you feel, sort of off track, offline, feeling undesirable or undesirable of life. You just kind of feel lost. It's important that you restore a sense of home for yourself and get into a routine where, first thing in the day, you're doing what you love, being and looking at your routine and when you're productive. When are you at your sharpest? When can you then sort of maximize and capitalize on those early morning hours and do what is restorative and healing to you? I recommend doing the recovery journal, which is 3 pages of longhand writing. I know a lot of people say, well, I'm not a writer. Even if you write a few words, I need to pay more attention to myself. I need to sleep better. I need to eat better. I want another relationship. Even if you write a couple sentences a day and then flip through the pages, you're at least listening to yourself. It's making a relationship with yourself the best and finest relationship that you will have on this planet. Oh, but what do you mean? It means that you might need to then find your own rhythm once again. Purge and cleanse yourself of a lot of the situations that you have then brought into your life. I highly recommend, getting into those early morning hours and doing the writing and then doing what really makes you feel good. If you're into exercise, get your exercise in. If you're into painting, or if you're into singing, do it first thing. Get your painting done, get up earlier than you usually do. Begin to enjoy things like the mystery of the dark sky in the morning, and where you can just see the stars. Take yourself out for a morning walk. Get begin to step up your coffee or your tea. Get something really premium for yourself as you start, and then set an intention to have a routine today where you get back into some structure and you start to have time that you're, doing something for you, where you're and letting go of sort of the tumultuous thoughts, and look to see to what degree are you resisting your own truth, because that is what will set you free. You will discover that you're a true lover, a true perfect mate. You're a very genuine and generous person, and that you're going to protect that from now on, and you're going to take stock of the lessons learned. So keeping a notebook with you, just jotting it down, lessons learned. What did I need to do? So you kind of coach yourself from the subconscious level. Bringing that notebook around says, I have something important to say. Some of the most valuable books you'll ever read are the ones that are blank when you first pick them up. In other words, it's your own writing. Begin to take those habits and really get yourself into a flow